Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and this is your other host,
Christina Fasonic. How are you, Damien?
I am well, thank you, Christina. We had lovely fall weather in Pennsylvania today, and I very much enjoyed the lovely fall weather. I even busted out a sweatshirt to sort of sartorically celebrate the lovely fall weather.
You can't just say it was a good day and keep going. I too wore a sweater today, so yeah, it was a little chilly, but just perfect out, really. Nice sunshine, and the leaves are turning, and we've got like probably another week or two before it's peak here.
Peak.
So
I think we have a new writer today. We do, right?
We do. We have a new writer on the show.
Good.
And allow me just a moment here to introduce him to everyone. Josh Barkan is a Writers Workshop alum and Iowa City native. He won the Lightship International Short Story Prize and was runner-up for the Grace Paley Prize for Short Fiction, the Paterson Fiction Prize, and the Juniper Prize for Fiction. He is the recipient of a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, and his writing has appeared in Esquire. He has taught creative writing at Harvard, NYU, the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa, Hollins University, and MIT. His books include the novel Blind Speed and short story collections Before Hiroshima and Mexico, selected as one of the 5 best story collections of 2017 by Library Journal. His work has been translated into Spanish and French, and he lives in Boston. So shall we bring him out?
I think it's an excellent idea. I think otherwise he would feel that we maybe betrayed him somehow.
Okay. Hi, Josh.
Welcome.
Hi, Christina. Hi, Damien. Thank you. I'm going to be reading from my new memoir called Wonder Travels, and this is a section from early in the memoir when I first discovered that my wife of 15 years had been having an affair. This was about 6 months after she had been on a long trip around the world. And at this point, when I'm going to be reading this story, although it's a memoir, I just found out about a day before that she had been having this affair. My wife was from Spain. She was a citizen from Spain. And when she came back from her 6-month trip around the world, at first, she had had a relationship in Morocco with a man named Mohammed, who I call Mohammed. And then when she came back, it was clear that something was very different from before, but I couldn't tell what. She said that she wanted to go back to Spain where her sister was going to have a kid. And this seems strange just because she had 16 nieces and nephews and she had never gone back to Spain to see any of those other people born. Once she got to Spain, she told me suddenly that she was going to go to the island of Ibiza. And for any of you who might know, Ibiza is really a party island.
She was going to take the kid, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but she said that she was going to go to the island of Ibiza, and I became increasingly concerned because why was she going to Ibiza, for example? And then rather than going to Ibiza, she went back to Morocco to be with Mohammed. So I'm going to read this section right after I discovered that she'd been having this relationship with Mohammed.
Okay,
a few prized possessions from her childhood are in that box. There are boxes of letters in there from the little correspondence she's been able to keep. When she came to the US, she wrote letters regularly to her family back in Spain, but they rarely replied. And there's some love letters in there, letters which tell her that I have always been suspicious of romantics who write their names on the beach, who send each other flowers, but that this is how I feel about her, that I love her completely and unconditionally. There's another letter from 4 years before where I tell her I know there are things I would like to keep improving to continue to be a better husband, but that I feel this has been the best year of our lives together. This is realizing her dreams of being in the magazine world and that I love her. There are boxes of photos from our trips on the shores of Maine and New Brunswick and Grand Manan, where we regularly go camping, and from the bottom of the Grand Canyon in the middle of winter, from China, Burma, Cambodia, Thailand, and Spain, and photos of us celebrating an after-marriage party in Spain 2 years after we eloped, in which my two grandmothers and uncles and aunts and parents flew to Spain for the small get-together of 40, just her immediate family and a few of her friends. What am I supposed to do with these photos? I can't look through them all. It's too unbearable, and I put them back. She will return soon if she comes home and I don't feel safe. I gather my financial records together and leave a box with my neighbors. I take my grandfather's old, somewhat broken Rolex and a copy of all the computer files on our desktop, and I take all the belongings in our safety deposit box, which are mine, and I get a new safety deposit box. It's crazy, I know. What could she possibly do to me? But it doesn't feel crazy. It feels prudent, smart. I've been told by two friends to protect myself. I've been lied to, and I feel I know nothing about what she values anymore. An affair, the way she is disrespecting us, shatters the myth we share the same values. An affair is something I have told myself in the past I would never do. When she was on her long 6-month trip, I saw a beautiful woman on the subway platform, and it was the middle of winter. My wife had been gone on her trip for 4 months at the time, and I was lonely. And I thought about that woman on the platform, imagining a relationship with her. But I knew I would never act on that impulse out of respect for us. And when a couple of weeks later I saw her again and felt the same impulse, I still didn't act on it, even though two strangers rarely meet again in the subway of New York. What do we share anymore after she has lied and gone back to Morocco? Once, meeting him on her trip, I can understand. A moment of impulse, of human frailty, even if she was with him for 5 nights. But after she has created a whole complicated lie, claiming she's in Ibiza, when she's really gone back to see him, this is not a moment. This is premeditated. This is willful. And if she is under his sway, enamored by him, who knows where things are headed? The night before she's supposed to come back, I meet with her friend downstairs who she's installed in the building, who has left her husband after 28 years. I tell her I believe Luciana has had an affair in Morocco when she was on her long trip. I say nothing about Ibiza and the present. I tell her this, and I see her begin to tear up. I tell her this because I suspect she's in contact with my wife in Morocco, and at this point I don't mind if word leaks back to her. I know what's up, because I just want her to come home so we can talk. I tell her I don't know how I'll respond when my wife comes home, but I hope to respond calmly. I tell her I've been thinking a lot about Gandhi, about how the best way to respond to someone is with nonviolence, for only they can judge themselves if they are to absorb what they have done. She tells me she's seen a pop psychology show on TV in which the host suggests in a time of confrontation one can choose to do nothing. Not doing anything is a choice. She's clearly suggesting I should not act violently when she comes home. Another friend who I've met for coffee, the screenplay writer at the apartment where we had the coming home party for Luciana after a trip, asked me if I feel like hitting her when she comes home or acting violently. I tell him no. I tell him I don't believe in that kind of violence. I tell him we've never screamed at each other or fought physically before. The day before she comes home, I call her mother in Spain to ask if she's returned from Ibiza to Madrid. Her mother says she thinks she has and that she's staying with one of her siblings. I try to contain my emotions over the phone, and I tell her I have reason to suspect her daughter has been in a relationship with another man. Her mother says she doesn't believe this. I tell her I have strong reasons to suspect she's been in Morocco instead of Ibiza. Her mother is confused. I tell her if she doesn't believe me, she should talk to one of her other daughters, who has used her frequent flyer miles to purchase the ticket to Morocco for Luciana instead of to Ibiza. I tell her mother I'm only mentioning this because I wanted to pass on to her daughter the reassurance that she should just come home, that everything will be all right, and that she shouldn't be afraid of coming home. Are you sure you want me to tell her that? She says. No, I say, only tell her that if she doesn't get on the plane. I just want her to come home so we can lay everything out openly on the table. I don't want any violence, and if she's afraid to come home, I want her to know everything will be okay. For a second, the thought crosses my mind that perhaps she'll tell her family she's flying back to America and then catch another plane to Morocco. Except for one of her sisters, she's lied to her whole family about going to Ibiza. These fears are unfounded. After 12 days of complete silence, Luciana calls from the airport in Madrid to say she's flying back home. We speak for all of 5 seconds. If she has the will, she can contact me at any moment. In little more than 8 hours, her plane will touch down. I've protected myself, and now I try to distract myself. The medicine cabinet has arrived, and in an effort to prove I've made good progress on the renovation of the apartment, I spend most of the afternoon drilling holes through tiles and installing the cabinet single-handedly. I also install it because I don't want a big, mirrored piece of glass lying on the floor at such a delicate and potentially violent time when she returns. I want the apartment to be clean. I want it to be nice and calm. I want to look good to impress her. It's a hot, humid day in New York, July 22nd, and once the medicine cabinet is up, I see I'm sweating hard from the work, and in anticipation of her arrival, a zit has come out. By now, she's probably arrived at the airport. I don't know how she'll be coming from JFK, whether she'll take the train as usual or take a cab, so I have no way of knowing exactly when she'll get home. I know her plane has arrived because I've looked up the landing online. I don't want to miss her when she comes in the door, but I need to do something about this zit. So I run up the street to a pharmacy to buy some Neutrogena pore cleanser. The turquoise cleanser looks beautiful in the new cabinet, which we will not share together, with mirrors reflecting the liquid from all sides. I clean my face. I put on an iron button-down shirt, which I know she'll like, with my best pair of fashionable jeans. I take a perfumed candle which she's bought, and that I know she likes, and I light it and put it on the coffee table. The smell of sweet incense burns slowly into the night air as the sun goes down. I leave off the lights in the small dining room so the mood is calm and not too bright. I leave on only a lamp and the candle in the living room by the couch where I wait for her, seated with my legs up on the table. I've turned up the stereo loud and I play a CD by Goldfrapp over and over. The driving beat of electronic sound, the high yet calm voice, the underlying powerful bass, the melancholy twinge to the entire album sedates, numbs, mirrors my mood and comforts me. I'm here, but I am in space. I'm present and waiting in this apartment, but I am thinking over the trajectory of our past. I'm thinking about us in Spain and trips far away, and then I notice the bumpy metal texture of the coffee tabletop and the flicker of the flame in the glass candle holder. I fixate on these textures, these smells of incense, these surfaces, the nothingness of a moment, the feeling of emptiness of her expected arrival. What more is there to say except to play the funeral dirge, the end of our marriage? She comes in later than I expect. Her plane has arrived more than 2 hours ago, and even with immigration, she should have already been here. The music is loud. I don't move from my position. I stare forward blankly, lost in the music and in my thoughts and in the texture of the furniture. I hear the metal front door faintly as it falls shut. I hear her put her bag down. I hear her move around. She doesn't say hello. The music is loud and she doesn't turn it down. She traipses around the corner from the dining room into the living room, and she catches a glimpse of me. And she turns around and goes to the bathroom. She must have jet lag. She goes to the refrigerator and pulls out a pitcher of cold water and has a drink. She's sizing up the situation, developing her strategy, figuring out her first move. I've said nothing so far, nothing negative, nothing welcoming, nothing at all. When I'm angriest, I'm silent, she knows. I'm opaque, waiting, watching her without any movement, my eyes cast forward looking into the candle. She says hello and decides to try to act normally, as if she's just come home from a normal, quick trip abroad. I don't respond. She sits down on the couch at the far end from me. She leans her body away from me. She's tanned from being on the beach in Morocco. She wears a white cotton shirt, similar to the one she wore when she first seduced me years before. What has she worn for him? She leans back and begins to say something trivial and normal, and I interrupt and say, I want you to tell me the truth. I just want you to tell me the truth. She pulls her jaw up sharply, shutting her mouth as if thinking of protesting, and then thinks better of it and realizes she's caught. So you already know, she says.
Hi. All right, Josh. So I love the way you ended that. I just want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me the truth. What we would all like to have from both our fiction and our nonfiction. I just want you to tell me the truth. No, those good stuff. I love the way you use the kind of the narrator, the persona of you in these moments is kind of responding with the material as a substitute for the emotional at the very beginning of this, where there's all these material actions you're taking to protect yourself, but there really isn't the kind of protection that you require at that particular moment, I suppose, or I suspect.
Yeah, those are really two great ways of thinking about it, Damien. I like that the material of the table that I'm at and the conveying of the emotions through the setting. And I think it's one of the things that coming at memoir after a background of already having published 3 books of fiction before, just that way in which we can use those techniques of a novelist to convey the emotion of what we're experiencing, not directly through necessarily our own emotions per se, but describing the emotional content of what we're seeing and how we're perceiving things around us. And then also, as you were saying very significantly, there is no protection ultimately emotionally to the kind of shock that you experience when you do discover that your spouse has been involved with someone else. And by that, I don't mean that a relationship breaks down just because of one person. It's always 2 people involved in a relationship ending, but there is still, even if there's a lead up to a relationship ending, in my case, it was still quite a shock to me. And that's really what this book is about, the process of healing and overcoming after that kind of shock, flailing in New York City and then going out to El Paso, in many ways trying to flee initially, perhaps run away from things, even though a friend of mine who was an 80-year-old pianist said, you can't just run away because you bring your problems with you, meaning you bring yourself with you. And
The
then,
limited utility of geographic cures.
yeah, yeah. I mean, geography itself can't cure you. But then going on in this memoir on to Mexico City, falling in love with a painter in Mexico City, and having a tremendous number of incredible experiences in Mexico, both in Veracruz, in the jungle, in Oaxaca, experiencing all of the kind of tremendous traditions around the Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead in Oaxaca, and then going up into the high Sierras down to the Pacific, having the incredible experience of also the kind of jungle along the Oaxacan coast, and then eventually going on to Spain, where my spouse had been from, my wife, and having overcoming by re-experiencing some places that had been dear to me, but that had seemed to be robbed from me initially when my spouse had had a relationship.
So that is the question that I have, that I'm sure is the big question that everyone asks you, because those of us who write memoir more than our genre sometimes get asked this question. What has been her response to your book?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have been asked every time. I've been doing many events, and I do think it's an understandable question. But I think the thing that's important is that I never wrote this book for Luciana. I didn't really even, I didn't write it as a means of therapy for myself, because otherwise that wouldn't necessarily be of interest to the reader. And I'm looking for an audience and looking to connect with them. I did write it partially in the hope of trying to use the book as some kind of vehicle, perhaps as a search for happiness, as this kind of Pollyannish as that sounded. When I began writing the book, I was only 9 months after the initial experience of the shock. And so I hadn't lived many of the experiences that I ultimately end up writing about. I hadn't gone to El Paso, I hadn't gone to the Apache Kid Wilderness, I hadn't gone to Mexico and fallen in love with a painter and had these amazing experiences. So I hadn't gone on to Morocco, where I ultimately do to see if I can find Mohammed, the person who Luciana had had a relationship with. So there are a lot of things that I hadn't experienced and that were new to me. But through that process of the kind of struggle that I was facing and overcoming the struggle that I had had, in part by doing all sorts of vigorous, letting myself feel very present in the moment that I was living, letting myself feel the beauty of in Oaxaca, as I was with this cousin of the person, Monica, who I had the relationship with in Mexico, who was pointing out snakes to me and mushrooms, and as we went hiking and with his dog, and letting me be very much in the kind of present and feeling that way of overcoming, rather than dwelling, say, on the past and on the relationship of the past. So all that's a kind of way of saying, Christina, that the book, I think, is for the people who have also struggled, who have also lost, who, whether they've had a relationship in which someone has betrayed them, or whether they've simply gone through a kind of difficult relationship of some sort ending, or whatever kind of particular struggle. This is, in that way, a book not about simple and quick overcoming, but over a period of 2.5 years, this slow, slogging process that is overcoming. And that's who the book is for, rather than say whether Luciana has read the book or not, which I don't know.
Well, I think that that's a compulsion that a lot of readers have. Like, ooh, what did they say, right? And thank you for answering that. And we do have some comments here from some of our viewers. Karen Bryant says, so powerful and so vulnerable. And I would agree with that. It's never easy to talk about some of the most painful times of your life and kind of bear that on the page. And Jerry says, the work has a strong, driving, relentless beat. It's painful to attend the tale's progression because it is so real. Excellent recounting. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you to those two people responding. And yeah, I mean, I think one thing in terms of just that sound quality, I think it's one of the things that when we look to certainly writing that I appreciate more, it's we get to the kind of that level of beauty that can enter into the writing, and so much with sound. And to the point of the first person who had responded, talking about that kind of putting oneself out there and being vulnerable. I mean, I think one of the things that I hope to do in this memoir, and that I think people have been reacting to quite strongly and well, is because I have a number of people after readings who come up and tell me about their own experiences, say where their spouse left them, or just other difficulties that they've gone through. Is my hope is to kind of, in some ways, to have the honesty, so that we don't have to necessarily be ashamed of things that simply are true. And I think one of the things that memoir can do is simply by having that tremendous level of honesty, which is really your greatest responsibility as a memoirist, to write as truthfully and honestly as you can about your own life, then in doing that, it ceases to be about you, the person writing, in that kind of way, and it starts to become about the honesty of a life lived being revealed, and the chance then for other people to tap into that honesty and say, yeah, I sense truth there that speaks to me because it can reflect the honesty of my own experience, meaning someone else, the reader, and what they're seeing. And so that's, I think, the kind of bargain that you hope you make in memoir, is that your own level of honesty, rather than being something either of embarrassment, it's the opposite, hopefully, that it becomes something in which we can share just what it means to be human.
Right on.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Josh, for making time to come on. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank
I know
you.
you're in the middle of a big book tour.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm a little all over. You know, I'm based in Boston, but yes, I'll be in New York. Well, I'll be at the Boston Book Festival this weekend, but I'll be in New York City this week, in Washington D.C. and Virginia, and it's really great to be on your show with the Appalachian writers. And you know, I spent quite a bit of time living in Roanoke, Virginia, and was deeply grateful to be part of the Appalachian community there. So thank you both for having me today.
Cool. Thanks so much. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Same
Good night,
time.
everybody.
Good night.
Right.